Putin's special envoy speeds to Davos for a high-stakes meeting with the U.S. delegation. We'll talk about this with political analyst, European Leadership Network UK member Alexandra Filippenko. Alexandra, glad to see you, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Alexandra, the situation surrounding Greenland has appended the course of the World Economic Forum in Davos, pushing Ukraine into the background. As Politico reports, many had expected this summit to focus on Ukraine, with Russia portrayed as the European Union's main adversary. Instead, discussions are now centered on the threat perceived to be coming from the United States. What are the main expectations for this year's Davos World Economic Forum? How has the situation regarding Greenland shifted the agenda at the Davos Economic Forum?
Well, as we've seen from personal messages that were shown to the world by President Trump, both President Trump and the European leaders are discussing what is going to be talked about in Davos and how important is Greenland right now, and should, as Emmanuel Macron put it, should they gather the G7 and some additional invitees on the margins, but I would a little bit disagree about Russian aggression being on the sidelines, because the Russian threat is what Donald Trump talked about while discussing Greenland, because Donald Trump posted on his Truth Social network that NATO has been telling Denmark for 20 years that you have to get the Russian threat away from Greenland. Unfortunately, Denmark, according to President Trump, has been unable to do anything about it. Now it's time, and it will be done. So President Trump himself talked about the Russian threat, but Russian threat not coming to Europe from Ukraine and from the Eastern Hemisphere, but the Russian threat coming in from Greenland and surrounding Greenland, let's put it this way. So the Russian threat is there, and it will be discussed, but from the different angle. Not talking about Ukraine, although definitely Ukraine is one of the issues that is going to be discussed. And even when President Macron texted to President Trump about setting up a G7 meeting after Davos in Paris on Thursday, they discussed that. Macron texted that he can invite the Ukrainians, that's number one, then the Danish, the Syrians, and the Russians in the margins, also to discuss separate issues and some separate questions. But of course, we understand that the Davos Forum that was supposed to be centered on economic discussions, on discussions regarding some financial agreements or some agreements between the United States and the European Union in the economic sphere, it is moving towards a political discussion regarding Greenland, and a political discussion regarding who is controlling Greenland. And with all what's been said by President Trump in the last few days or weeks about Greenland, it seems that it will be the main focus. And of course, for President Trump, it is part of his idea of the American hemisphere, the Western hemisphere. And President Trump again posted that there's no doubt that China and Russia are very active in the Arctic region, and the Arctic region is what is of interest for President Trump. So the Davos Forum, from the economic side, is moving towards more political and diplomatic discussion, and maybe it will be prolonged to some meetings that President Macron talked about, maybe not in Paris, maybe there in Davos, maybe it will continue in Switzerland. But in any case, we understand that this visit of President Trump to Europe is going to be quite loud, let's say. Today is 1 year since the inauguration of Donald Trump, and it seems that on the one hand, everyone is more or less used to the way President Trump acts, but on the other hand, he keeps on surprising the world leaders. But in any case, the Russian aggression or the Russian threat is going to be discussed, but maybe not only regarding Ukraine and European countries, but regarding the world from Greenland and regarding the world from the Arctic Circle. The Russian threat that President Trump has been talking about is there, according to the American leader. So in any case, it is going to be discussed.
Alexandra, the Kremlin's chief negotiator and a representative of Vladimir Putin, Kirill Dmitriev, is expected to make an unexpected appearance at the Davos summit to meet with the U.S. delegation. According to Euronews, this development jeopardizes the anticipated agreement on a peace plan between the United States and Ukraine. What is significance of Kirill Dmitriev's unexpected appearance at the Davos summit? How could his meeting with the U.S. delegation affect?
Well, we understand when it has something to do with Kirill Dmitriev, it has to do with business. Of course, it's all about the business. It's all about the discussions regarding some business deals, including the Arctic. But I must say that even though on the American side, of course, Kirill Dmitriev is being portrayed as the special representative of Putin, as the special representative of the Kremlin, we've seen time and time again that even when Kirill Dmitriev makes a deal with the American side, it doesn't bear fruit. It is not being signed on to by Putin. It is not being it's not being implemented by the Russian side, even when Kirill Dmitriev is making a deal. Of course, he is discussing with the American side. He's been present in all the discussions, including in Miami and in Moscow and in St. Petersburg. But nothing came out of those discussions. Nothing came out of those talks. Throughout the year, he's been there. He's been talking to Steve Witkoff. He's been communicating with the American side, but nothing came out of it. We understand that, of course, the representation of Russia by Kirill Dmitriev is, first of all, let's say, he is the face of some business negotiations. But will something be actually decided on? And even if it's going to be decided on, even if they decide to go on with some, I don't know, economic plan or peace plan, will it be actually implemented? Oh, I highly doubt it, because Kirill Dmitriev has been there time and time again, and nothing came out of the discussions. As the American side says, not an inch. Russia didn't come closer, even in an inch, to the American position. The war is continuing. There are no new business deals, and there can be no new business deals while the war is raging. So we understand that this is a symbolic appearance of Kirill Dmitriev. Of course, it's very important for him. It's very important for his supporters in the Kremlin and for his part of the supporters that are surrounding Putin. But it doesn't mean, absolutely doesn't mean that anything at all will come out of it.
And Alexandra, we're talking a lot about Greenland. Trump published an image showing himself alongside Vice President Vance and Secretary of State Rubio planting the U.S. flag in Greenland. We will show this photo. Greenland is U.S. territory established in 2026. The post reads, how can you command this?
Well, this is a very Trumpian style, let's say. This is an AI-generated image, the flag of the United States in Greenland. This is very similar to what we've seen as President Trump in a crown, for example, or President Trump being the Superman. This is all the same. Let's look at it this way. Of course, it has a political background. Of course, it seems to be not that that harmless. It seems to be a diplomatic pressure, some kind of a pressure from President Trump. But actually, it's better to look at it as a picture or AI-generated image of President Trump in a crown. It's the same thing. It doesn't mean that he's the king of the United States. It doesn't mean that he's the ruler, the ruler of, I don't know, the world or whatever. Or when he portrays himself as, for example, a Jedi from Star Wars, it doesn't mean that he has a lightsaber that actually works, or that Star Wars are real. So this is the same. It's very Trumpian. It is, first of all, directed at his voters, at the people of the United States that are very clear in how they see Greenland and how they see what President Trump is doing. Right now in January, as usual, we have all those polls that either sum up how the Americans see what's been happening in 2025, or some new polls regarding the new actions of the administration. And all those polls, and those that sum up 2025, and the polls that are talking about or asking Americans of the recent activities of the administration, all those polls are not, let's say, too good for President Trump. Because according to the Quinnipiac poll, and it's important to say that the Quinnipiac poll is, of course, a representative poll, but it is a poll of voters, of registered voters. So 86% of registered voters oppose the use of military force to seize Greenland. And even if we are, for example, this AI-generated image, of course, it's not a military force. It's not that President Trump, J.D. Vance, and Marco Rubio are using weapons to install the American flag. But 55%, according to the Quinnipiac poll, oppose purchasing Greenland and oppose any actions of the U.S. administration regarding Greenland. And if we look at New York Times Siena poll, it's even more. More than 70% oppose purchasing Greenland, or any kind of a purchase, or any kind of way to own Greenland, because purchasing Greenland means, first of all, using federal funds, using taxpayer money to do that, to purchase Greenland. And of course, in a New York Times Siena poll, the same amount, almost 90% of respondents oppose the use of military force to seize Greenland. So what President Trump is posting, it's directed on to the American people, to his voters, to the Republicans that overwhelmingly are against purchase of Greenland, using military force to seize Greenland. They oppose it. So this is the way for President Trump to show, oh, it's actually so easy. So we will just do it. It will be so easy. It doesn't amount to anything. It doesn't require us doing anything. It's so easy. Look at it, my dear Americans, my dear voters, my dear Republicans. And it's very important for President Trump right now to talk to Republicans, first of all, to talk to the registered voters, because we understand we're all moving towards the election, the midterm election in November.
Dear viewers, please share your comments. What are your thoughts on the situation regarding Greenland? We are reading all your comments and seeing everything you share. Thank you so much. And about the Peace Council, Vladimir Putin has been invited to the Peace Council, the creation of which was announced by Trump. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov said about this. Earlier, Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban also reported receiving an invitation stating that Hungary's efforts to achieve peace are gaining recognition. It should be recalled that Trump intends to establish a new international body, the Peace Council, with membership costing at least $1 billion. What is the purpose and structure of the Peace Council announced by Donald Trump? Could this decision undermine ongoing efforts to hold Russia accountable for its actions in Ukraine?
Well, for President Trump, it's only natural to have this ad hoc council. And it's extremely important to note it's ad hoc. It's not a permanent body. It's not a permanent international body like the United Nations or G7 or NATO or any other international organization that unites different countries. President Trump, and according to many sources from his administration, wanted to talk about the establishment of Core 5 group that would be in parallel to G7. The Core 5 group was supposed to include the United States, China, Russia, India, and Japan. And Donald Trump was supposed to talk about this idea of the C5 or Core 5 group in the National Security Strategy that was published in December. According to many sources, there was this idea. They floated this idea. President Trump wanted this idea to become public, but in the end, it did not make it into the National Security Strategy. But the ad hoc council, the Peace Council exactly for Gaza, the Peace Council exactly for the Middle East. This is according to President Trump's idea of international relations. He believes that any international organizations or any transnational organizations should not be permanent. They should be ad hoc. They should be just a coalition of different countries that are gathered in order to achieve some goal, to achieve one particular goal. And they don't have to do anything about any other goals, any other issues. For President Trump, for his realist approach to the international relations, there can be no permanent international transnational organizations that unite different countries. So that is why even during his first term, he talked about, for example, the idea of leaving the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. Now it's very difficult for any member state to leave NATO, but President Trump floated this idea. For him, he also, we all know that he left the Paris Accord. Now that the United States signed just a few years prior to that, we know that the United States now left 86 international organizations. And it is because President Trump believes that international organizations just shouldn't be there permanently. They should be established to just tackle one issue. So this peace coalition, let's say, this coalition of countries, this peace council, this council is on Gaza. It has nothing to do, according to President Trump, according to his idea, it has nothing to do with Ukraine and with Russia attacking Ukraine and with Russia committing crimes against Ukrainians and the Ukrainian people and the Ukrainian government. So for him, it's absolutely different. It's different issues. It has nothing to do with one another. As President Trump said, there can be other councils regarding Ukraine or regarding any other issue. So for him, it's all different subjects. It's all different. It's not connected in his mind, in his idea. Although we understand, as Putin was invited to this coalition, to this, let's say, a peace council that we don't know, nobody knows right now. How will it be funded? How will it be united? Who will be actually sitting and where? For now, it's not publicly known. We will know more in coming days. But Putin was invited along with Lukashenko, that the United States see as this mediator between the Washington, between the establishment of Washington and between the White House and the Kremlin. So we understand that President Trump might have talking to the Russian side in mind regarding Ukraine, but for President Trump, it's very important to understand that he doesn't see any contradiction in it, because for him, this is an ad hoc, not permanent coalition of countries talking about Gaza and nothing else. On the sidelines, yes, maybe on the sidelines there's a possibility to discuss something else, but this ad hoc organization is discussing only Gaza and Gaza alone. So for him, there is no contradiction there. He doesn't see it as a contradiction because Russia is not an active participant in the Middle East. As of now, we know what Russia has been doing in Syria, of course, and nobody should forget where Bashar al-Assad is right now. So right now, Russia is not an active actor in the Middle East. So for President Trump, there's no contradiction there whatsoever.
Alexandra, we understand that Trump wants the work of this council to be expanded to address other conflicts as well. Could Ukraine be one of them? Maybe yes. And the newly established council is tasked with overseeing compliance with the ceasefire, although achieving this is something Trump has so far failed to secure in Ukraine. Moscow continues to adhere to its mantra of no ceasefire until a comprehensive peace agreement is reached. The Kremlin still rejects Ukrainians' demands to hold fighting along the current front line. In other words, for Putin, this is a gift, yet another step from international isolation toward rehabilitation. Isn't that right?
Yes, absolutely. And another gift we see is in President Macron's message to President Trump, because Emmanuel Macron, the text that was published by President Trump, says that I can set up a G7 meeting after Davos in Paris on Thursday afternoon. I can invite the Ukrainians, the Danish, the Syrians, and the Russians in the margins. So this is an invitation, basically, from President Macron that of course, shows that this idea of isolation, of total diplomatic isolation, even by the European Union, the European countries, the coalition of the willing, that is unequivocally supporting Ukraine. Even here, we see the cracks. Even here, we see some ideas of, for example, sending a special envoy from the European Union to talk to Russia. So this now the push from President Trump was successful in order to get maybe not Putin himself, but the representatives of Putin to the international arena to talk to world leaders, to talk to the world, and to talk to the business elites. Again, coming back to Kirill Dmitriev, this all was a push by Trump. But for President Trump, it also it mirrors his approach to international relations. This is a realistic approach to international relations, not a liberal one. And for President Trump, this approach dictates that, yes, you need to talk to anyone and everyone who controls the government, even if you don't like that person, if you don't like even if it's a dictator, and even if it's a horrible, terrible dictator as Kim Jong-un, as Putin, as Lukashenko, or as anyone else. If they are not threat to your national security, to the national security of the United States, I mean, then you are supposed to talk to them. This is an approach of President Trump, and it seems as if it is working right now. And we are seeing also the representatives of the Kremlin talking willing to talk to, willing to be at the Davos forum, and maybe even having some meetings on the margins, on the sidelines of the improvised G7 summit or meeting, at least, that President Macron is talking about or texted to President Trump. So, of course, we see less isolation right now. It doesn't mean that there will be less pressure from the Europeans. Of course not. It doesn't mean that at all. We must understand that. It's very important. But also, yes, we see this as being a gift. gift, let's say, to Moscow, a gift to Putin, the same way as Sergei Lavrov, the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Russia, is talking about Greenland and how Greenland can actually dismantle NATO and how it can put an end to NATO. Of course, it is all a big gift to the Kremlin, a great possibility to talk about it by the Kremlin pundits and by the representatives like Sergei Lavrov. So it doesn't mean that there will be less pressure. It doesn't mean that there will be less sanctions, for example. No, probably it might mean only the European Union trying to somehow communicate and to send its envoy and to talk to and be part of this discussion, not to give way only to President Trump to communicate with Putin, but of course, as you said, it is bringing Putin and his regime out of isolation.
Alexandra, the European Union may form military alliance involving Ukraine, but without the United States, Politico reports. With the reliability of U.S. security guarantees within NATO increasingly in doubt, European capitals are considering Ukraine as their new key military partner. If Ukrainians' military capabilities are combined with those of France, the United Kingdom, Poland, Germany, the result would be a force capable of defending the continent independently. For Ukraine, this could become a new alternative to NATO, maybe with the EU providing tangible security guarantees. How could a European military alliance, including Ukraine, but excluding the United States, affect the balance of security in Europe? What potential advantages and challenges would arise from combining the military capabilities of Ukraine, France, the UK, Poland, and Germany?
Well, today is a year of the Trump administration, of the new Trump administration. And throughout this year, in front of our eyes, Europe has been reimagining itself and realigning itself as a military alliance. And it's the first time that it's happening in our history. The United Europe, not the Euro-Atlantic agreement, not the Euro-Atlantic security, including the United States, including Canada, of course, but European military alliance, the United Europe, including the United Kingdom, of course. We understand that the coalition of the willing is already a kind of framework, let's put it this way, for a military alliance. And of course, it is potentially a very powerful military alliance, although for that, they will need, the European countries, will need great political power and the great power to talk to the citizens and to explain to European citizens why they need to invest more in a military, why they need to invest more in their security, why do they need to decouple itself from the United States and from the United States, including their nuclear umbrella. Because on the Security Council, on the UN Security Council, it's not a coincidence that we have the United States, China, Russia, and of course we have France and the UK as the powers that really have nuclear weapons. The nuclear weapons of the UK, the nuclear weapons of France are basically given under the control of the United States. So maybe now France and the UK will have to remember that they are actually nuclear powers. It's not only United States, it's not only China, it's not only Russia. Of course, we understand that India and Pakistan and probably Israel, probably North Korea, but it's de facto, not de jure. De jure are France, the UK, the United States, Russia and China. So there are two nuclear powers in Europe. So they can theoretically, right now, have their own nuclear umbrella. And under that nuclear umbrella, they can have the Ukraine too. So we understand that this will mean, of course, Europe will need so much more money to invest into their own security. Of course, Europe will need to invest so much more political capital because right now, European European politicians, a lot of them are working on the grounds of, oh, let's talk to Russia, let's communicate with Russia. The far-right parties in Germany and some parties even in Central Europe are ready to talk to Russia. And they don't want to go into a confrontation with Russia. So the other parties, the other side of the European Union, will need political willingness, political power to really make a military alliance out of the coalition of the willing, including Ukraine, of course, the most capable army of Europe right now, just the army that needs weapons, the army that needs European support for that. To become the most powerful united European army. But it is all possible. It is all possible, and it is happening in front of our eyes. In any case, even if things will change, even if President Trump will be controlled, let's say, by Congress, for example, if we imagine that happening, especially after the election of November this year, even if this happens, still, it seems to me that the European countries right now understand that this Trumpian isolationism and Trumpian international relations are a way of the United States of the future. And most probably the United States, even if some other president will come to power, and some other party will come to power. I mean, of course, other president will be there because President Trump cannot be president after 2028. But someone else will come to power, even if it's not a Trumpian style president, even if it's not a Trumpist president, still the United States seems to me will not be that reliable partner for the European Union. And we are seeing this coalition forming right in front of our eyes, but we must be realistic. It will take time and a lot of money for this coalition to actually become viable.
Alexandra, a heartfelt thank you for joining us today, for this meaningful conversation and for unwavering support for Ukraine and its people. Alexandra Filippenko, political analyst, European Leadership Network UK member, shared her thoughts, insights with us. Please share this interview and continue supporting Ukraine. Thank you so much and see you.
Thank you very much. See you.